So, introduce yourself. Tell the world a little bit about who you are and what your experience with this pandemic has been like in the state of Massachusetts.
Okay, so who I was before pandemic and then...
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, this is my auntie, guys. You're getting a little bit more of my background experience, not just me. Video.
My name is... Should I say my name?
Go for it, as much or as little as you can.
My name is Judith. Of course, I'm his auntie, paternal auntie, so we have the same last name, Alexandra. And, well, before pandemic, I was very active at my church. I'm a minister, I'm a youth and children minister. I was very active at my church, doing all kinds of things. I worked for the state of Massachusetts before all the craziness. I still get to do some work for the state at home with children, but everything is happening at home now. So I would like to pinpoint something that happened before the pandemic. I usually, the last 5 years, I have a retreat that I do with a group of young youth and young adults. Yeah. We spend 3-4 days somewhere away in Northborough in the woods, and it's really nice. So this year, as usual, because our president didn't care to let us know that Corona was around and Corona was bad. Third week of February during school vacation week,
Yep.
as usual, we went to our retreat house in Northborough, and we congregated in a sort of college dorm kind of thing, because we usually stay in a seminary, and the rooms have some of the rooms have 3, 4, or even 5 bunk beds. So, you know, no need to tell you that we really were cramped into.
Yeah, it's hard to social distance in that kind of environment.
Yeah, there was no such thing. The concept, the social distance concept, basically didn't exist in my world, and none of us over there, because we had no idea that there was a disease that was killing people in February. I guess our president knew, but we had no idea. So we went in there. Now we do that every year, and we did it this year. After, because we went in on the 20th, we came back the 25th or something like that.
Oh, that was a couple weeks before state emergency.
Yeah. After, 2 weeks after, the whole wide world went into a standstill. And till today, I am like thinking, oh my God, if one person was sick, was positive in that retreat, we could have had a lot of dead people. Even some of us, especially me, I have extreme pre-existing conditions. But thank God, I guess all of us were negative then.
Yeah.
Then, so after the retreat, all the things that happened, the kids came back home, school, everybody, universities, everybody was back home, and everybody was quarantined. So what I did, the time for me to get ready to organize my household, like, I mean, to do the proper shopping, to get the stuff things, I think while I was doing all these things, and because our president didn't bother telling us that this thing has been here a while by now, because beginning of March, I'm doing all these things, I'm going everywhere I want. toilet tissues, I want Kleenex. I'm trying, everybody is stockpiling on things. Water, I'm trying to get everything. And it was already too late. It was already too late because at that point, I myself got sick with COVID-19.
Yeah.
Which changed my world. So then, after recovery and everything,
Thank God you recovered. And like,
thank God, I need to say I recovered. And thank God I got sick late because I was around all these young people, all these people with me, young and, the chaperones and everybody. If I was sick then, everybody would have gotten sick, and who knows what would have happened. So, this is what happens when people don't have sense of responsibilities. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people could have been alive if we knew by February that there was a disease and this disease was a killer. But anyway,
it's sad because there's countless testimonies of that same exact line of thought. It doesn't matter what your age, if we had prior knowledge of how bad this could have been, and just like the most affected groups, even outside of pre-existing conditions, so much of this would have been avoided. And even to this day, it's frustrating.
Yeah, there is no way I would have gone to that retreat, exposed, put my life in danger, and put a bunch of young people's lives in danger. That wouldn't happen if I knew. So in any case, nothing happened at the retreat, but beginning of April, I was diagnosed with COVID-19. Then I recovered and I was fine.
How long did it take for you to recover?
I started feeling well, and now my doctor was like, if you are symptoms free, then you can go out of isolation. But what they didn't know, there isn't being symptom free, like 100% symptom free. There is something that now they're talking about being a long hauler, like a long haul. So what maybe in quote I would say symptoms free, I wasn't sick, even though I was tired. I was, any little move, I was exhausted all the time. But because I didn't have the night sweat, I didn't have the obvious symptoms of being ill, then I went out of isolation by a month after. I mean, some people say they did 10 days, 15 days, but for me it was a good 30 days. And then after 6 weeks, I went and got tested, and I tested negative. So that's interesting, guys. I tested negative, and the thing about this disease is that people don't know. People don't know. The doctors, they tell you one thing and then they tell you another thing. They don't know exactly about the disease because diseases didn't give time for them to do all the studies that they were supposed to be doing. It didn't come like HIV where they had time to study people, to study this and that and this and that. And to teach people how to
Again, like we had a choice, or the president had a choice.
Well, yeah, but it could have been better, but it wasn't better because we didn't know. The president didn't let us know, supposedly not to panic us, but then we ended up dying. So it was so interesting. Like I kept on thinking, they don't know, then I have to be careful. So I had chest pain. At some point so May 18, I tested negative. June 19, like third week of June, I started feeling chest pain.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to risk it this time. I called my doctor, and my doctor said, well, it's not COVID because nobody had it twice, but I'm concerned about your heart. So I want you to go to the emergency room after, protesting. Then I decided because I wasn't getting better, I went to the emergency room. Well, got to the emergency room. They at first thought it was my heart, and then they kept me at the hospital. So I told them that I was COVID positive and then COVID negative. So they said because we don't see an obvious cause for your pain, we're gonna do the COVID test again. Now, did the COVID test and turned out that I was COVID positive again. So.
And this wasn't false positive. This was like genuinely like a second time getting.
Well, we don't know. So at the hospital, they didn't want to tell me anything. They're like, you positive. So we suggest that you do at least 10 days in isolation.
Okay.
So because all I had was the chest pain, and the chest pain resolved on its own. So I just stayed in isolation for about the 10 days. I didn't have the chest pain, like after 3 days it went away. But I stayed in isolation for another 10 days. And there I am. Now at that time my doctor was like, at the emergency room they didn't say anything. But my primary care doctor said, well, it must have been a false positive, that doesn't happen. Like all over the world, people don't get it like that so soon and stuff like that. If you were sick, if you had the same symptoms as before, I would have said, maybe it was a false negative that you had and then now you're still positive, but you got better. So
like I was about to ask you, given your extensive history
conditions, yeah,
of pre-existing conditions, having worked for the state of Mass and lived here for over 3 decades, and given your background as a Haitian immigrant coming into the country, how do you feel about the other end of the COVID response in terms of, all right, now they're saying that they're coming up with the vaccine, it's coming up soon, but you've already had a shaky history with dodging COVID, impossible to, avoid social distancing, and, you've got it twice. Like, how do you feel about this vaccine?
Yeah. Well, now my life has changed forever because I'm more careful. It was difficult to see people and not to be able to hug people. Like my church reopened on phase 1,
Yep.
and I went to church, and although we wear masks and we wear gloves at church, we don't wear a shield. I felt like when I used to go to the church, I felt like I needed a shield because obviously my system is weak, my immune system is weak.
Yeah.
Because I had cancer treatment, and then I have a brain disease. So I don't want to risk it. Like the first time I felt like it just crept up on me without me. It got me by surprise. And this time around, I really want to be more careful. So I stopped going to the church because everyone is getting, including me, everyone is getting comfortable now with the idea of
Florida.
yeah. So
And other states.
Yeah, even though we wear masks, but the precautions that we used to take at the beginning when we were confined and when everybody was in confinement, we don't take these kind of precautions anymore. So I go out less and less. I do my life has changed in a big way. I usually enjoy going to do my grocery shopping and stuff like that. Now I do my grocery shopping online, and I found out that I save money when I do my grocery shopping online. I guess that one is gonna stay with me because I buy what I need.
Yeah.
I don't go, oh yeah, I'm going in the aisle and then I see something. Oh yeah, I could get it, and then I get it. So my grocery shopping has, cost has decreased.
It's very minimal. It's not like you have the ability to do what I like to call for my dad, like the distracted shopping. Where
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, because I stay focused on what I need and what the kids eat here, and that's what I do. So that's what that. Now, in terms of a vaccine, to tell you the truth, the only reason I got tested is because I got sick. Because I was scared to death about getting tested. I wasn't sure what the government. I cannot say the government because it's not the entire government. What this president was saying about this disease from the get go. I wasn't sure because it's like he was talking with, how do you say that, with both corners of his mouth. And this, I don't like that. So now, knowing what we know that he did, I heard it, how as he was saying that the disease was bad, the disease wasn't like the flu, it's 5 times more dangerous than the flu.
And then we're gonna trust them to take the same antibodies from that deadly pandemic and make a vaccine.
I heard all this. Now, although I believe in science, but the way he had that way of pressuring people, we could tell, excuse me, there was a race to come up with the vaccine because whoever came up with the vaccine first, I know academia, I worked in academia and research. You come out with it first and then it makes a big deal, you make a bunch of money. So I felt like there was a race to come up with a vaccine. And then we had the president pressuring people because he wanted it out before elections. To tell you the truth, I was thinking if there is a vaccine for this thing, I should be the first one in line to get it. But now, after hearing those tapes, I have no confidence. I'm waiting after the election. Hopefully we'll have a new government, a new president who will make sure I trust him. He is a man of faith. He's a man of his words. I trust him to make the right decisions as much as he can by the people. So if he goes through the process and he with his own scientists and they decide that this vaccine is good, I guess I should be getting the vaccine. It's not that I don't need the vaccine. I need the vaccine because I don't want to get sick again because, with God help, I dodged the bullet the first time. I don't want to risk anything. But the way this vaccine came about so fast, I don't know. I mean, they talked about conspiracy, they talked about a bunch of things. Now it's like
when you're rushing people then you're misdirecting the professional's use of resources.
Well, but listen, you have CDC, head of CDC said one thing, and then you have someone who is not a doctor, who is not a scientist, he said something else, and then he's like, oh no, he didn't understand the question. Things are not that easy. Things, it's people's lives. If the same person who just allowed hundreds of thousands of extra people to die because he wasn't going to talk about it, and now he has a vaccine, he's rushing a vaccine, why should we believe in that? So that part, it's a wait and see game for me. So I don't go out much. I don't go to church anymore. I don't know. Maybe once in a while I may. I do everything online. I continue to take care of my spiritual life, my religious obligations, but I do everything remotely because I'm being careful.
So my next question for you, given your really diverse education background, both in this country and Haiti, and also just being a pastor and former professor, amongst other things, like how do you feel about all the other social and political issues that are coming back to surface or just coming to surface now, given the coronavirus? And do you feel like, I don't know, despite all the negligence in these past 4 years in the country, do you feel like it was a necessary step in us together as Americans, like realizing where we're really at?
Well, let me say this. Oh, I need to correct something. I'm not a pastor because I don't own a church.
Okay.
I'm a minister. Yeah.
Minister, God.
Yeah. So let me go back. Even if there was never COVID, the coronavirus,
Yeah.
even if nothing that is happening today didn't happen, I will never go for that president, for that government. I didn't vote for the guy. I don't like the guy. I knew what he was going to do. Let me tell you what I did. The night of the elections, I stopped watching the news. I stopped reading the news. I totally, for 3 years, almost 3 years, no news. Because there were some stupidities. There was some, belittling people. There were too much that was happening and coming from higher up that I couldn't deal with. I stopped doing the news. Now, I went back to the news because of the Black Lives Matter movement and the police brutality. I went because I do my protest in a way. I can't go out to protest because of COVID-19, because my legs are not strong anymore. I used to travel to Washington, D.C., to the White House. I used to travel everywhere to march and to protest with my kids when they were little. But cannot do that anymore. However, I'm on social media. If you go to my story on my Facebook page,
Yeah.
I always have some kind of something about police brutality to show, because some people are still in denial. Some people still believe like, oh yeah, this is the police, they're there to protect us. Some people still believe in the ideals. These are the ideals, but it's the opposite that is happening. So what I do whenever I get one in there, if I could do it every day in terms of my time, I would never post something twice. There are so many incidents, and know that those that are videotaped are just a few compared to the number.
There's stuff
incidents
every day that happens in inner city, outer city, suburbs, like.
Yeah,
the racism's real.
and now they're saying that I have a heart condition, but I know for a fact that these things play the role. Like,
Explain that.
2 days
Elaborate.
ago. Yeah, 2 days ago, I was watching this incident. This 19-year-old, the police said he ran a stop sign. Well, he was getting inside his street. So the police stopped him right in front of his house. And his mother got out because there was a police. And what? She asked him for his papers. He gave her his papers. Then now she's standing, her hands on her guns, so the mother is like, okay, he gave you his papers, go check his record, give him a ticket. She's like asking this kid, are you on probation? Did you do this? Did you come from jail? Did you just come out of jail? Why asking?
When you already have the official documentation.
You have
right
the
there.
documentation. Why asking? When I checked it, because I have to check my heart rate, when I checked my heart rate, it was under 120, 122, of course, which was way too fast.
Just watching this incident.
Just watching the incident, because it's like these things happen all the time. Now I'm watching, this mother was there. If the mother wasn't there, this 19-year-old college student could have been dead.
Yeah.
He could have been dead. So, and as a mother of a black son also myself, these things, when I see them, and my son had his own encounter also where he almost got killed by the police. because he had a flat tire on the highway, and the police who came was getting stupid like they usually do, because they'll ask questions in Westford where he lives. They'll ask questions like to escalate the situation instead of diffusing the situation. They will ask you questions to make you start fighting so they can shoot. And so, but my son was on the phone with AAA, and the AAA operator said, I'm staying with you on the phone to hear that, and I'm gonna be a witness, because there is no need. Someone has a flat tire. Of course, he stopped on the highway.
They were ready to shoot him in the middle of a police. In the middle of a phone call with another agency.
Yeah, if you come because he's blocking, it's because he needs you. He has an emergency. He needs help, and then thank God, the Holy Spirit, guided this AAA operator to call the Westford police and tell them that something really terrible is going to happen, and the police will be liable for it. And then he explained, and then they sent somebody who came and diffused the situation. My son could have been dead.
And this is even in Massachusetts, so people be thinking
Massachusetts, you're not safe anywhere. Blue is blue. Yeah. Be careful. Black is black, blue is blue. And when they meet, sometimes that's what happens, what we see. So these things, make me so anxious. There is no way I could live with a healthy heart. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. Maybe other people are not paying attention because they're not so medically involved. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Like, I could feel like my heart going fast, and I have that machine, I take it, and it was.
Yeah, and then now that, there's being a lot more spotlight put on these types of issues on a constant basis. I bet you there's lots of mothers of all walks of life, even white, that are probably, they're starting to feel sick, just learning about it. But unless you address all the issues democratically as we claim the system is, then where's the real progress?
See, that's the thing. There is a system, but the system was never for us.
It wasn't built for people to go uphill. It was built to go downhill. Black
people, the system was built, and that's why there is a lot they're not changing in this constitution. The system was built to keep us as slaves, and these people, I don't think in their mind, we deserve the same rights. How could you? I saw it when it was happening live. This 17-year-old killed 2 people and then injured some other.
Oh, the Kenosha, Wisconsin thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
And this kid walked, there was, oh my God, there was the U.S. Army, whoever that the president sent there, he waved at them with a long gun in his neck.
Yeah, and yet you got...
Who could do that without being dead?
And yet you got unarmed black kids.
And he had that, they gave him water. Somebody gave him, the police. The local police gave him a bottle of water. And then everybody saying he just shot 2 people. He just shot 2 people. He didn't get arrested. He got arrested in Chicago. Come on. Don't get me started.
Yeah. So. Yeah. That's the ugly truth. That's how passionate it gets. Yeah. But I don't want to keep you any longer because I know you got your church meeting. Any last words before we conclude this exchange? Any advice you want to give, especially to people that are just waking up to the reality of America?
We need to take care of ourselves and each other. We don't have the police. We don't have the system. The system is not for us. But we have each other. We need to learn to take care of ourselves and each other.
And when you speak of the we, like how large does that group?
We see, for white people, they don't see Asian. I know Asian people think they are all that. They don't see all that. They see black and white. That's how they see it. They don't really care that,
Maybe for your generation, I feel like my generation's starting to, I don't know, at least like from the time I was in grade school to at least maybe like my early college years, and I just graduated this year, I feel like even for my lifetime, I've definitely seen such just such like a steep moral progression upward versus
for some Asian people.
yeah. And I'll say that with people across the board of every ethnic background, just as like Americans, because I feel like in more people just having that opportunity to have
But not
friendships or
blacks?
other relations with black people. No, even amongst ourselves, but I feel like the progress, like you said, like there's way more that we need to do in terms of taking care of ourselves as black people.
Oh, definitely. Now, for the system to survive, they have to give you little crumbs all the time, because otherwise, what we did, what our ancestors did in Haiti, it will happen. So the system, they know they've learned their lessons. See.
But they don't understand for this time, if the system really breaks, it's going to be people of all walks of life, because it's, as many people say, it's the great American experiment. Would you like to talk about that as an educator?
Well, and that's what happened in Haiti. In Haiti, it wasn't like only the slaves and children of slaves that revolted.
Mm-hmm.
The people, what they used to call the people of color, the people who were half blacks and half white, because their masters had raped their mothers. Mm-hmm. They had a whole subgroup that was a large subgroup like that. These people got together with the slaves against the masters, because they totally outnumbered. Even the slaves by themselves outnumbered the masters. Well, when they added their children, who were children of the masters, they totally outnumbered the masters. But slavery was so brutal, there is no way people would have survived, and people would have not revolted against it.
Yeah.
Rebelled.
And that's in any society.
And so what's happening now is that from time to time they will give little privileges to some people.
Yeah.
Or to a group. Because now you see that the Asians, they started giving them a little bit more privileges, more considerations, and then you see that they're moving back. But then there is a book, and I don't know if it might be out of point now, when the Irish and the Italians became white. Because back then, they didn't consider them as white.
And the key, I feel like, for people to really breaking the system is to really learn the history of it. Because then you'll realize when they talk about white supremacy, they don't even, it's another form of classism.
Yeah, you need to understand, you need to know, you can't do it without history. That's why I'm a history nut, because you can't understand it well.
Even the people who created the system, they don't believe in their own system, or they do, but out of like a weird denial.
America had played a big role into racism, into creating racism from all kinds of lies. Yeah. And creating eugenics, white supremacists. There were eugenics labs right in Quincy, Massachusetts. There used to be eugenics labs. Oh, you need to know these things. So and when people think this is the Northeast, this is the North, be careful.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, we didn't fall for that trap.
They might have done it at a higher level.
Exactly.
At a higher level. And then it just happened that the anti-slavery movement started in the North, but it doesn't. I mean, the reason it started is because there were slaves here too.
Yeah, even in these slave houses up here, you don't know what these people.
Yeah.
This is where they wrote the Constitution. So let's not go there.
Let's not go there. So we need to take care of each other, because so in that sense, if you are somewhere where you deal with people who do not understand what's happening, who do not understand the Black Lives Matter people, because there are some people with good intentions who are afraid of the Black Lives Matter, because we have a government that are making people afraid. Like people are talking about Antifa. Antifa is a terrorist organization. Antifa is just an anti-fascist organization. Why is it a terrorist organization?
Isn't fascism
so that then fascist is a good thing? Fascism is a good thing? Alright, Lou, don't ask me those questions. You get my heart rate.
And that's a wrap.
mean to say that I'm in my kitchen cooking?
No, tell them why this location. What were you?
Well, this location is because you surprised me while I was in my kitchen cooking. And we got a chance to eat as we were talking.
Yeah, I mean, this is the life of my childhood prior to full suburbanization. Ugh, and no shade, no shade, no shade.
Yeah. So we were saying, and
tell them the truth about what you believe this whole declaring Antifa an organization is about, or just the general demonization of any sort of political movement that doesn't sound American or nationalist.
Yeah, there is this issue. There is a fear. It's a real fear, and that's why you may see mostly black people are being killed by the police. You may see other ethnicities get more privileges, even if black people have been here forever. And the reason is that this is the politics of divide and conquer. Now, that fear, and Malcolm X talked a lot about that. There is a fear of black and white, poor white people uniting themselves. Because when you think about it, a lot about our struggles are also the struggles of poor white people, lower class white people. But the way they keep them from uniting with us is by making them, okay, you are white and these are black, you don't want to deal with it. And they also have them do the dirty jobs. KKK people, a lot of them, a majority, they are poor white people.
So talk about the whole idea of how racism is just another tool of classism, and how classism is what we're really fighting, and what societies have always been fighting.
That's
talk
the thing.
About that.
Racism. See, racism is to keep us divided, because if we understand the game, we would unite with lower class people, no matter what is the color of their skin or the language that they speak. And that's what's scary for the establishment. It's scary, and it's so scary that if you think of the leaders, all leaders who tried to advocate for unity among people of color and white and poor white people, they died. We lost Malcolm X. Malcolm X was entire white, but when he went to Mecca and he said, have you seen that movie? Everybody needs to see that movie, Malcolm X. When he went to Mecca and he was saying, you know, he sat, you know, he was praying next to white brothers. He couldn't believe it. He had such an experience. When he came back a new man.
Because he was so warped by the American experience that he had to leave to get full perspective.
Yeah, well, because as a Muslim, at some point you have to do a pilgrimage in Mecca.
Yeah.
And he came back another man, and he started, you know, believing in these ideas of getting together with the white brother. He died. Well, Martin Luther King, he didn't die because he was necessarily only because he was defending black people's rights. He died because he was dangerous. When you try to get white and blacks together, you become dangerous.
Wait, so why is that whole idea of, or as the late...
There is power in numbers.
So the idea of good trouble that has been brought up in Congressman, right? Congressman John Lewis.
The late Congressman.
John Lewis. Okay.
Yeah.
So why is that idea of civil rights for everybody, you know, all marginalized people, even like you said, poor whites, but I feel like we can extend that even further to just be like the non-old money, super duper old school. They call it what, the 5 or the 13 families. I know there's that whole conspiracy about that. So outside of them, why is it so dangerous for the 99.9 whatever? Why is it so
that's
dangerous?
the thing. The idea of the 99.9. You see how they repress this movement?
Yeah.
Because that's a dangerous idea too.
Explain that.
It's the same thing. Because the 99.9 didn't see color. The 99.9 saw money, power.
Mm-hmm.
And that's dangerous because everything that is happening, the racism, the same way it was for slavery, it's because the establishment, the established people, the owning class, they want to keep their money, they want to keep their power. Money is power.
I mean, but it was the same thing since what, like ancient Egyptian days, like as early as man's been around.
So now the 99 and 1 movement was a movement across the board. Across the board. And these are dangerous movements. These are the movements that they are afraid of. So in Black Lives Matter, now they're saying all kinds of bad things about Black Lives Matter because I don't know if you pay attention to that. In those protests, there are lots of white people.
Yeah.
Especially young people. Lots of white people. So, and that's why they're repressing them so much.
So my question for you, now that we're taking more of the conversation behind the politics directly to today's biggest unifying movement, or what's trying to be the biggest unifying movement, what would you explain to people who get spooked out by the whole idea of the leaders of Black Lives Matter being trained Marxists? Like,
well, let me tell you, when I was a teenager, when I was growing up, my first year at the State University in Haiti, even before that, we were all Marxists. That was the thing to do. We were all Marxists. We were all trained in the Marxists because, remember, I grew up under a dictatorship. And because our dictator in Haiti, what he did, Papado, what he did, in order to get the sympathy of the American government, what they did is that everyone they wanted to get rid of, they labeled them communists. If you are labeled communist during the time that I was growing up, that means you could die anytime. Yeah, you could die anytime. If you Marxist terrorist, I mean socialist, communist, you could die anytime. And that's, however, you know our young people are, they're gonna go where exactly people don't want them to go. There was always an underground socialist movement in the young people, the youth, you know, adolescents and young adults at the State University. You know, lots of us were part of the movement. I was telling someone the other day that I have some classmates who are from rural origin and from humble families who got scholarships to go study in Moscow. Oh, wow. At that time, it was the USSR, the Union Republic Soviet. It was communists who studied there. A lot of them studied medicine and then went back to Haiti, and some of them studied in Cuba. At that time when we were growing up, Haiti had no diplomatic relations with Cuba, not because Haiti didn't want to, because America didn't want Haiti to have any relations with Cuba. So this movement was underground. Kids would travel, go to Jamaica, because Jamaica always kept relations, their diplomatic relations with Cuba, and they have a nice exchange program where Jamaican high schoolers go to Cuba and they learn Spanish and then they go back to their country. You know, they have that experience. We in Haiti, we didn't have that experience. However, underground, when the people who deserved the scholarships, they used to make them travel to Jamaica, and from Jamaica go to Cuba, where they learn to speak Russian, and then they travel to Russia to go to med school. And a lot of them are in Haiti right now, working alongside of the Cuban doctors in Haiti. Now, so the movement was there and it was alive. So I don't have any fear. I don't know. I cannot understand. I cannot comprehend why people in America have that big fear about the Marxist movement.
Can you break down
The Marxist theory.
what his theory is and why it's important for us to understand something outside of just pure capitalism?
Yeah.
Because he wasn't critical of capitalism in and of itself as a whole, but the way it's historically practiced.
Yeah. Well, without going into deep.
Because he knocks communism the same way, not for the idea of it, but how it's practiced.
Yeah. Without going into an elaborate description, let's talk about what's fearful for America. Because what's fearful for them, it's mostly Cuba. Because what used to happen in Cuba, America owned the sugar cane plantations and the sugar industry in Cuba. And what Fidel Castro did, I mean, he didn't come from humble beginning. His family was wealthy.
Yeah.
What he did in the revolution, he stopped that. And then kicked them out, because the idea was that everybody needs a fair chance. This is why here people are so fearful. Yeah, that's this is why people. Let's say you lose that you lose that kind of freedom, but then how many people who would be on the street, who would be in gangs, who would be homeless, that have a fair chance in life? If you take so that's the thing. It's the if you see the movement, if you see the theory as an equalizer, putting people pretty much at the same level,
versus
then,
putting people in a caste where
this group will always be there down. This group will always be at the bottom
for something that they
and then
can't
that
even
group will always
control.
be up.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and these are the ideals. Now, people will tell you, well, they were wealthy, those Russians, some of them on. Of course, we are human, we're not perfect, but these are the ideals, and that's why when I talk about socialism, I like the example of Cuba more than any others, because in Cuba you have basically a small island that was totally cast out because the Americans put that blockade against Cuba. This is exactly what the French did to Haiti after the independence. We need to know Haitian history. Everybody needs to know Haitian history.
Wait, doesn't matter what race you are. Everybody
needs to know Haitian history, because that's the beginning of it all. And if you know Haitian history, you will understand what the Americans did to Cuba, what they're still doing to Cuba. But Cuba survived. Cuba survived because they have those plantations. Because exactly the same thing. Haiti, it was more difficult because of the times. Because of the time it happened in 1804.
And they ravaged the land, so they couldn't do anything on their own.
And everything that was happening, all the businesses, all the things that the Haitian could have inherited, nothing worked because of the blockade. And white people would support other white people. Owning class will support other owning classes. Yeah. So all the countries at that time went against Haiti.
So, and this is the last question that I want to ask you. Can you break down the idea of white beyond the concept of skin complexion and ethnicity? Because if people really understood what it means, they'd realize only like again, 0.1% is really quote unquote
See,
white.
and you know that well now, you know. That whole thing about skin complexion, whiteness doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Whiteness is nothing. It's not about skin complexion.
It's about money.
It's about money. It's about opportunities. It's about power.
Yeah.
It's a created concept.
So does that mean
Created
most of
concept.
these Trump followers that pride themselves on like white pride, so does that mean it's like essentially they're like with the rest of the people of color, but they're following this?
Listen, if you go into DNA, if you go into genetics, there is nothing.
Because we all have melanin.
There is, you know, there you will find people with more melanin, people with less melanin. But then people's origin, there was an experiment that I was watching on YouTube where people's origins, people were like shocked to hear their origin.
Mm-hmm.
Like black people would have their origin deep in Europe where there isn't any black person, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And if we think about the origin of the world started in Africa. That's science. I'm not even talking as a minister, I'm talking science. The world started in Africa, so I don't know, you know.
So what are people really buying into? Like that whole, what was it, the one,
They make
that
people-
one drop rule, technically everybody would have failed if you actually checked the genetics of it.
That's right. So they make people believe in this, and that's why they had eugenics live. They tried to come up with some fake science to prove that, you know, races were separated, had two women separated, and that blacks were inferior. And they came up with a bunch of things with your sinus and blah blah blah, the angle and all kinds of things, and it all fell because it's not science. It's pseudo science. Whiteness in terms of skin,
through 12. Damn it.
whiteness in terms of skin color, it's pseudoscience. It's pseudoscience. It's a created concept.
It's alternative facts.
Yeah.
Yep.
What I'm going to say the last thing, I don't know who's going to see that tape, but if you understand Haitian history, you will understand the world better. You will understand why we have blacks and poor everywhere. You will understand what colonialism has done to the world, and the connection between colonialism and what we're seeing.
It's
now.
so crazy because there was this guy that I ran into yesterday at Four Corners on my commute back, and he said he's a devout Christian, and he was telling me part of why everything is so out of whack with the current people, presumably Christian, pulling strings, is that they're like the moral center of the institution fell off in, I think he said 11th or 12th century, but it started with and it's funny
The
they
reform.
yeah
See, but then they came up with the WASPO here in America, the White Anglo-Saxon Protestant, and all the KKK, all the racism we have inherited came from the WASPO, the White Anglo-Saxon Protestant, and these are the people. And for them, these White Anglo-Saxon Protestant, Irish, Italians, Jewish, none of them were white.
Wasp.
Were white.
They were not wasps.
They were not white, so they were not white. And so the religion, the same way. See, that's why you have to know Haitian history. The same way religion played a role in slavery, religion plays a big role also in racism.
So one question, in today's world, is church and state separated?
Well, that's what they're saying, but look at what those white supposed to doing.
So is that a yes or no?
Look how it's a no, because it's hypocrisy. It's hypocrisy. I cannot stay in my church.
What's the first thing you do when you go into a courtroom as a witness and you testify? What's the first thing you do?
What on the Bible what you talking about when
When you swear an oath? That's
you swear? But then I'm gonna tell you, when someone is becoming president of the United States, they swear on the Bible.
Yeah, so church and state is not separated, people. God
Yeah.
bless.
It's
It's
separated
all a lie.
When it serves their purpose.
Give me that anything. Almost super clean. You can't fuck with me. Smoking at the team. I'm a rolling stone. Can't leave me alone. Can you be my buddy?
Leaving my auntie's neighborhood,
Riding back for
journey back to Boston,
overload.
and then further out into bumfuck nowhere of Massachusetts.
You look like a nut.
Good night, yeah.